I now have a pleasant duty to introduce Honorable Mr. Justice Raghuram Garu, who is the Director for the National Judicial Academy. If I'm not mistaken, he's the longest ever serving Director for the National Judicial Academy, which speaks for itself. This is an academy that trains judges across the country, Supreme Court judges, High Court judges, and you can understand the kind of pressure that the academy is always in. And to serve for more than 6 years in that position as a director speaks tremendously of his abilities. A graduate of Andhra University in law from Usmania University, he was an advocate in 1979. He joined, and then he served as an advocate and was then appointed as an additional judge in the High Court and retired in 2013. He served as the president of CSTAT from 2013 for 3 years until 2016, when he became the director for the National Judicial Academy. On assuming charge as the National Director for the National Judicial Academy, Justice Raghuram introduced a number of improvements in the administration of the affairs of the Academy, and the Academy cannot flourish without effective research. So he pursued research and ensured that research was given importance in the Academy. Under his stewardship, efforts were made to deliver knowledge at the doorsteps of judges in different parts of the country by arranging and conducting regional conferences in different regions of the country under the caption Enhancing Excellence of Judicial Institutions. During his tenure, 29 such courses were held across the country. He liaised with the Ministry of External Affairs to conduct a number of memorandum of agreement with Supreme Courts of Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Egypt, and Fiji. Batches of judges from these countries regularly visit the National Judicial Academy for training, and you can understand the kind of profile that is associated with this. So apart from judges, he has liaised with the other government departments and central tribunals very effectively and utilized the infrastructure available with the Academy to conduct programs for officers of the Railways Claims Tribunal, Central Administrative Tribunal, presidents of Consumer Fora, Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, senior IRS officers beside law officers, and State Bank of India. Finally, I would like to say that I have known Justice Raghuram Garu for a number of years, for close to 10 years. And I must say he's a thorough gentleman. When he visits you, he just appears to be such a simpleton, such an unassuming person that you will not recognize that he's a judge. He would be sitting and he would come to you and he would talk to you. He is one of those people who is most approachable, unassuming, a very good-hearted soul, and a thorough gentleman. And I don't have any words except to fold my hands to express my gratitude to him for having very kindly consented to deliver the chief guest address at this 80th Congress of the Association of Surgeons of India. Thank you very much, Justice Raghuram Garu.
Can we invite our chief guest for his address?
I'm honored to have been invited to associate with the 80th Annual Conference of the Surgeons of India. I have the privilege of a warm and personal
I think it's not playing well.
for over a decade.
Rajiv, can we play this, please?
I'm honored to have been invited to associate with the 80th Annual Conference of the Surgeons of India. I have the privilege of a warm and personal acquaintance for over a decade with Dr. P. Raghuram, the current president of the Association of the Surgeons of India. He's amongst the youngest of surgeons to hold this exalted leadership position of an association of highly skilled professionals whose degree of precision is verily defined by the specialization. The ASI is the world's second largest after the United States and the largest organization in the Asia Pacific region, which represents the fraternity of surgeons embracing 12 specialty surgical disciplines, including rural and armed forces surgeons. Established 42 years ago in 1938, the Association of Surgeons of India conducts its annual conferences at designated locations across the geographical territories of this vast nation, providing a unique platform for its distinguished members to conclave and deliberate on critical issues, on myriad challenges and dynamic evolutions that substrate any cognitive discipline as deeply intellectual, exponentially dynamic, and critical as surgical care. Your President, Dr. Raghuram, worked at world-renowned centers of excellence in the United Kingdom for over a decade and then relocated to India. Ever since, he has been assiduously dedicated to the cause of spreading awareness, innovating protocols, and catalyzing transformation of breast health care in India. In recognition of his signal services, Dr. Raghuram was conferred the Padma Shri, a distinguished civilian award, and the following year in 2016, the Dr. B.C. Roy National Award, the highest award conferred for distinguished service on a medical professional in India. It is therefore appropriate that the distinction of presiding over the ASI has been conferred by his peers on Dr. Raghuram. Your President has appropriately identified creative leadership and accountable governance as a motif for his tenure. Towards achieving that objective, he has pioneered and executed several transformative programs, successfully executing them as well. The ASI, under his stewardship, coordinated the procurement and supply of personal protection equipment to health workers nationwide, navigating enormous challenges posed by the lockdown during March to June this year. This effort was supplemented by raising considerable funds from overseas donors and generous members of your fraternity to alleviate the pandemic crisis. He has also pledged to provide a comprehensive health insurance cover for staff members and their families till 2025. Providing avenues for education and training to surgical trainees is another critical initiative undertaken by your President. Several training courses for surgical trainees were organized in the physical mode initially and is currently pursued in the online format. A national online skills enhancement program, regional refresher courses, and the introduction of the Association of Surgeons of India Lifetime Achievement Award to recognize and honor long and distinguished services rendered by members are among other creative initiatives designed and implemented during the current presidential tenure of ASI. This, the 80th annual conference of the ASI, the Asicon 2020, is unique. It is held amidst the gloom and shadow of the COVID pandemic that has enveloped the globe, affecting millions of lives, overwhelming healthcare in every society, extinguishing human lives on a massive scale, killing the global economic order, and wreaking havoc on livelihoods across the planet. Nations and societies across the globe, the rich and the poor, those at the pinnacle of prosperity and those striving towards that goal, those with a robust Medicare infrastructure and others more modestly endowed, the economic juggernauts and others not so, are alike struggling to cope with this recent fury of a mutant ultra micro species. That is, as has occasionally in the past of human history, showcased the profound insignificance of a self-proclaimed sapient, perhaps the junior most in the evolutionary calendar, habiting the overwhelming complex matrix of a universe defying horizons. This year's conference is thus virtual, dictated so by COVID-19. It is my distinct pleasure to invite the large number of over 5,000 surgeons and surgical trainees from across the world, and my honor to felicitate the 6 distinguished honorary fellows, our guests from overseas outside India, and the 60 surgeons from India who are being conferred the distinction of Fellowship of Association of Surgeons of India, the FAIS, to the Asicon 2020. I wish to speak a few words on the ethical basis of the medical profession, just touching upon the broad contours of this theme. Before we commence the conference, I however place on record our deepest reverence and profound gratitude to the numerous healthcare professionals across the world who are engaged in providing comfort, Medicare, and relief to millions afflicted in this hour of international health crises. Most of your colleagues have lost their lives. Several others suffer consequences of short or long-term pathologies induced by this virus, and several have suffered social ostracism occasioned by the fear of the pandemic. With fortitude and dedication, braving seemingly insuperable odds, and painfully navigating daunting shortages in personnel, protective equipment, and critical infrastructure, several doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals are engaging in discharge of the highest traditions of your craft. This is a scintillating instance of the highest ethical standards pursued by the medical profession, and in the midst of an overwhelming crisis for mankind. With origins in Grecian antiquity, the Hippocratic Oath is among the oldest binding documents in history. Much of its content has become obsolete, subsumed in changes brought about by scientific, technological, social, political, cultural, and economic transformations. We now habit a world of legalized abortion, of physician-assisted suicide, euthanasia, invasive procedures, deeply toxic, chemical, radiological, and nuclear invasive protocols, induced gene mutation, splicing, and excision as authorized therapeutics. We inhabit a world of statutorily mandated disclosures of patient information, of explorative and experimental surgical and medical procedures, and a world where human clinical trials of new formulations and vaccines are routine and commonplace. All these would have been heretical and clearly unethical under the Hippocratic Oath metric. Ancient heresies have transmuted as current orthodoxies today. This distinguished assemblage is aware of both the ancient oath and its current variants, nuanced by the Geneva Declaration of 1948, the 2017 revised Declaration of Geneva, and the revised version of the Hippocratic Oath accepted and adopted by the World Medical Association. We are aware of the Helsinki Declaration on Ethical Principles for Medical Research involving human subjects and the Taipei Declaration on Ethical Considerations regarding health databases and biobanks by the World Medical Association. And also, you are aware of several other studies and critical analyses by several professional bodies of physicians across national jurisdictions. Few in your profession truly recognize that current translations of the ancient words have over time become less complete, as well as substantially varied from the classical translations of the oath. Current perceptions of the oath do, however, continue to honor the history of medicine and the bond with principles of selfless tradition of healing. Oftentimes, the oath administered and taken with the peers is viewed merely as a process of obtaining the diploma from the medical school rather than a dedicated allegiance to the purpose of medical education and the practice of the healing craft, namely, the best care of each patient by a competent physician. Initially, post-industrial revolution and the transformation of liberal societies from the matrix of a minimalistic to that of a welfare and affirmative state model, medical education and public health were considered among integral obligations of the state. Currently, this model of the state is on the blink. Public and state-funded medical education and healthcare are fast giving way to progressive and accelerating privatization of this domain. World over, we witness an exponential withdrawal of the state from healthcare provision and transfer of this domain to corporate and business entities. In large parts of the developed and developing economies, healthcare is more a trade and a business and less a profession. Medicine, as a noble profession, is increasingly exposed to the solvent of health economics and what is called economic credentialing. The concept of professional devotion or the compassionate physician to the patient is in a substantial measure eroded as the concept of the oath faces challenge and assault from increasing demands and constraints of corporatized Medicare. This phenomenon has led to loss of professional autonomy and the thraldom of the physician to the demands of the balance sheet, of the chief financial officer of the corporate hospital, and to the insurance actuary. There's a constant and growing conflict between the ideal of the physician as the knowledgeable, humanitarian, and idealistic healer, and the corporate employed medical professionals' allegiance to models of profit harvesting. The doctor has now, alas, become another service provider. Financial entities structured on the profit model have entered the domain of healthcare in a big way, competing with each other. Business entities similarly engaged. This change has brought in its wake galloping, accelerating degrees of opacity in healthcare administration, in therapeutic protocols, in billing strategies, financial targets for the physicians, and multidisciplinary complementing monopolies encompassing cognate disciplines such as the pharmaceutical, the diagnostic, hospitality, brand promotional, and other supporting domains. And this has led to several other regressions hitherto associated exclusively with carpet-bagging occupations. Law and medicine are often considered noble professions and learned professions. Of late, however, these are increasingly perceived, and not without some justification, as additions to profit-seeking businesses and as commoditized professions. The hagiographic prefixes of these professions are fast wearing thin. The current regress in ethical mores in several jurisdictions has roots in the growth of privatized medical education. In this reality, commoditization of healthcare commences at the medical school and degenerates into a trade or business in the corporate hospital. The general ecosystem of a symbiotic self and corporate interest synergy in turn influences and corrodes the whole profession. Altruism is reduced to an episodic rather than an institutionalized phenomenon. We as a society need to urgently reflect upon and address this serious ethical regress. Even as we grapple with the ethical challenges posed by the inherited and contemporaneous socio-economic, migratory, cultural, evolutionary, structural, and technological challenges, there arrive epochs in history as do now, when sudden spurts of overwhelming phenomena invade societies. These test the limits of human foresight, design, and planning. Large-scale human induced or natural disasters, epidemics, and pandemics illustrate crises that operate as solvents for painstakingly evolved ethical norms of societies and of the professionals therein. The current pandemic poses, in particular, for the physicians and healthcare establishments and workers, critical choices and ethical dilemmas defying easy solutions. How do we, as hospitals and doctors, as administrators of therapeutics and developers of vaccines, as governments or institutions, drop the list of the critically ill who require prophylactic, preemptive, or curative healthcare, and in what order of priority? At this current and critical bend in the history of our species, as the healthcare supply and demand matrix becomes increasingly asymmetric, in the coming months, there are difficult choices to be made. As a responsible, professionally well-informed, and concerned body of experts, you must perhaps deliberate, identify strategies, and offer your advice and guidance in this conclave of surgeons. What should be the ethical parameters guiding choice making in dealing with the seriously ill, with those with non-COVID related yet critical pathologies, and those COVID-induced health concerns? Among these, there are deep ethical choices emerging of prioritizing health access to the needy, and the order of precedence, therefore, devising ethically robust, clinically equitable, professionally competent allocation strategies for healthcare during challenges mandating rationing of such access is what this galaxy of surgeons, you, are best equipped to do. Private healthcare providers must revisit current billing norms and profit harvesting protocols, standardize treatment protocols to extend access to critical healthcare for all in need, and customize traditional accounts of medical ethics to fit the enormous challenge now upon us. Your recommendations, predicated on informed deliberations during the course of Asicon 2020, could provide a template for evolution of formal guidelines or statutory prescriptions for adherence and implementation by all who are engaged in healthcare. While on the aspect of medical ethics, I must mention, in passing, a simultaneously facilitative and disruptive technology which impacts many cognitive domains and healthcare as well today. This is artificial intelligence. Applications of AI are increasingly invading and fertilizing clinical practice in many jurisdictions and have become routine in a few as part of clinical practice, particularly in intensive care. Clinicians in intensive healthcare need to develop a more than nodding understanding and comprehension of the ethics and responsibilities that come with healthcare AI, which is essentially computer algorithms which run complex computations on data using advanced statistical analyses. The algorithms are normally trained on large data sets, which enable more accurate predictions than possible with traditional clinician-centric diagnosis and therapeutics. Programming robust, neutrally harvested ethical norms into the meta data sets so as to ensure fair and equitable AI outputs is a challenge facing many professions and public service deliveries alike. Without due care, historical inequities captured by statistics, programmed into the algorithms, and churning out priorities and protocols for healthcare could perpetuate and even accentuate inequitable and arbitrary access in AI-driven healthcare. Currently, global studies indicate that people are less comfortable and therefore less likely to use medical services when these are known to employ artificial intelligence. Patient trust is still largely dependent on having a clinician remaining in charge of diagnosis and decision making. But this is soon likely to change. And we, all of you, must prepare for that moment of change when digital doctors and robotic surgeons could replace some of you. There are moral implications in integrating healthcare and artificial intelligence. Algorithms derive their power and accuracy from the data they are trained on. And often, training data is derived from individual patients. The use of patient-level data is morally problematic. Healthcare professionals and institutions must take care to use or share de-identified data to generate artificial intelligence. Governments should awake to this emerging technology and evolve statutory frameworks for ethical, privacy protective, and morally grounded standards for collection, preservation, sharing, and use of patient data for creating algorithms in healthcare artificial intelligence. Also, there is a bewildering melange of benefits and pitfalls in integrating emerging technologies with traditional professional protocols. As many of you are well aware, the emergence of super specialties in healthcare, the ASI family is an example in point, comprising diverse specialties in surgery, invite complex choices and a myriad problems for the ill in identifying the appropriate physician suited to the bouquet of symptoms a patient presents. With the emergence of integrated biotechnology and artificial intelligence, and the computational speeds and data analyses faculties currently available, and speeding up even as we speak, the digital dictatorship Yuval Harari observes is already upon us, professionals and laity alike. This phenomenon calls for a multidisciplinary approach to devising contemporaneous ethical protocols for healthcare, built upon the traditions of Hippocrates, but customized to current realities. The day of the physician, the lawyer, the sociologist, the administrator, and the moral philosopher coming together, auditing the present and future of healthcare delivery has perhaps arrived. I have flagged a few concerns, challenges, and opportunities for reflection, revisit, and evolution of ethical norms for the health professional as a lay outsider. At my age, I am a potential consumer of your skills, of the fecundity of your knowledge and the profundity of your experience. As such, I share with humanity at large a personal stake in your progress, individually and collectively, along with society, and hope for the continued luminosity of your professional endeavors. I do not wish to take more of your time, which is better allocated to your profound professional discussions and deliberations. I wish the Asicon 2020 and your deliberation in the days to follow great success. I thank your President, Dr. Raghuram, for giving me this great opportunity to digitally connect with the constellation of several Shushrutas of our time. God bless you all and Godspeed this conference. Thank you.